Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, August 29th through Sunday, September 4th, 2022. This week, there's actually not a lot of aspects. Probably the biggest headline would be the first quarter moon in Sagittarius, which is actually going to be pretty wild, and we will talk more about that later when we get into the forecast here. But there's not a lot of aspects, but that does actually have some really interesting implications. Something I've learned in astrology is that everything is temporary. So, for instance, if you have a time where you have a lot of harsh aspects, you are guaranteed a time of a lot of easy aspects following that. That's just how it works. This applies to a lot of different areas, but the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, as you could probably tell where I'm going with this, when you have a week like this where there aren't a lot of aspects, and really actually all September there's not a lot of planetary aspects, what that means is we are about to have some really intense aspects and planets kind of lining up relatively shortly later in the year. And instead of just continuing to hype this up, because I am going to hype this up, this is all just preparing the stage, as I've said. We're setting the stage. We're preparing things. We're preparing just as we usually do in Virgo, but this time it's a little bit more intense because there are some pretty crazy things on the horizon. But rather than just continuing to hype it up, I want to show you what I'm talking about. So before we get into the weekly forecast, let's actually just go forward a couple months. That way I can show you what I'm talking about. Now, at the end of August, just like at the end of September, all the planets are pretty scattered still, okay? But if you notice what happens if we go a month forward, as we approach the end of October, and then especially going into the early November, not only do we enter eclipse season because the sun is closer to the nodes, that's what always happens when the sun approaches the south or north node. This happens twice a year, but once that happens, Mercury and Venus will also be there with the Sun, very close to the South Node in Scorpio at the end of October. And Uranus, of course, is close to the North Node. Uranus has been close to the North Node most, if not all, of this year of 2022. So this is what I'm talking about. This is super wild. It does have a lot of implications, especially financially. Like I keep saying, the nodal axis is in Taurus and Scorpio, which is all about finances and how we support ourselves in this world, how we survive and, create a foundation, whether that be emotional, financial, whatever it is. We flesh out our existence here. So this is what I'm talking about. This is going to be pretty intense. Every eclipse season is intense, but we have a particular full moon lunar eclipse in early November. You can even see in this chart, by the time the moon comes around, the sun will actually be even closer to the south node than you can see here. I can go a couple weeks ahead. Um, let's go. Well, I guess I just passed it, but this is what I'm talking about. So just a little bit previous to this chart, you can see Venus, Mercury, Sun, and South Node are all lined up pretty close together, within 10 degrees from one another. And they do so pretty much just in time for the full moon lunar eclipse. So here you can see this full moon lunar eclipse on November 8th, just in time for the midterm elections in the United States too, to add even more fuel to the fire here. But this full moon lunar eclipse is conjunct Uranus and the North Node, which makes it a very intense lunar eclipse. It's only 5 degrees away from the nodal axis. And then, like I said, Sun is pretty much conjunct Venus and Mercury, as well as the South Node too. So this is some really, really intense stuff. All eclipses are intense, but this one is particularly so. So that's what I'm saying. Going back to August here, that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying, we're kind of building things up. We're setting the stage or what have you. Virgo this year is the preparation of all of that, and then Libra will be when things really start to line up, when those inner planets, Mercury, Sun, and Venus, all start to kind of line up together as they begin to approach the nodal axis. So the way to translate that into, how are we going to experience that exactly? I think I've sort of alluded to that. I mean, it's just whether you know it or not, you are setting your own stage for some major events that will happen in your life in November. Now, how severe or intense this is going to be will depend, of course, on your own natal chart. I always recommend to look at your natal chart. Whatever aspects I talk about in these weekly forecasts, you won't specifically know how it's really going to affect you unless you're seeing how these aspects fall in your natal chart, if they rub up on any planets in your chart or aspect any planets in your chart. What houses are they in? you know this knowing how these things will affect you personally does require that little bit of effort on your part. That being said, though, I am willing to look at transits for you if you would like. You can email me if you'd like, manic.mercurian at gmail.com. Of course, that information is in the description as always. But anyway, I just want to put that out there. These transits I talk about in these forecasts are really just applying to the collective. So how specifically your experience is, similar to the collective experience will of course vary depending on your own astrology. But yeah, this week not a lot of aspects, so really I would say enjoy that. This means that this week is intense, but it's not as intense as what we're about to go into pretty much. So um, take that how you will, I guess. Let's see, and I just want to make sure I've covered everything before I get into the forecast here. I think I have. Let's just get on with it here. So we start out Monday, August 29th with the moon in Virgo. Moon leaves Virgo though before noon Eastern Standard Time and enters Libra. And pretty much as soon as it enters Libra, right around noon Eastern Standard Time, moon conjoins Mercury. So this means that the focus is very intellectual, especially because both moon and Mercury are in Libra, which is a very intellectual sign. Libra loves to, hear different points of view and weigh the pros and cons of everything. It loves to see two sides of everything. It's a very cerebral sign. And with Moon, which, of course has to do with our emotional focus, our focus on a day by day basis, that is conjoining Mercury, which means that our feelings and our thoughts are like conjoined basically. Thoughts Mercury, feelings Moon, they're in the same place, they're conjunct, so we are, it's almost like we're not as emotional today as a whole, as a collective, of course. We're more using our intellectual abilities, our cognitive abilities, rather than our emotional facilities. Of course, I think it's good to have a variety of strong abilities or perception, like ways that you can perceive the world. It's good to have strong thinking, strong feeling, strong intuition, etc. But of course, we will explore those in different amounts at different times. Right now, it's really a cerebral, it's like a very intellectual start of the week here. Sun, of course, is in Virgo too. We are fully plunging into Virgo season. Last week, not only did the Sun enter Virgo, but we also had a new moon in Virgo. We're still kind of just barely coming off of that here as we start the week. So, very intellectual, very brainy stuff here when we start out the week. Now, if you have a lot of air signs or Virgo or Sagittarius in your chart, then this is going to be very easy for you. You're not naturally used to analyzing the crap out of things and asking the reasons why, being curious and projecting a little bit, seeing if A equals B, then B must equal C, or how can we like project based off of what we know, that type of thing. All the intellectual signs are very curious and they like to speculate a little bit. So that's kind of the energy that we're embracing now. On the flip side, if you have like a lot of water signs in your chart, or maybe like Aries or Leo, those signs are not, they're more intuitive, as I've talked about before. So this type of energy may be a little bit more foreign to you. It may be more unwelcomed, or it may seem unnecessary from your point of view because it's just not how you typically go about things. You typically like to live in the moment. Like, rather than questioning everything, let's just live in the moment. Let's be in the here and now. Let's use our emotion and our intuition. And like I said, it's just, there's different ways of going about things. But yeah, generally, as we start out the week, lots of mental energy. This could be really great for like deep conversations. Libra, I mean, Libra sometimes likes to keep it shallow, but it likes issues that are a little bit kind of thick too. Libra likes a lot to digest, I think. Libra also loves aesthetics, so we may be focused on that too, with Moon and Mercury in Libra as well. But generally speaking, we start out the week very intellectual. And even when the Moon switches from Virgo to Libra, that stays very consistent. One last thing about Monday before I move on here. we are coming off that new moon, like I said, so the moon is barely gaining any light. It's hardly visible at all today. Um, and so what that means is there's this kind of glimmering of a new beginning, a new lunar cycle. The new moon technically happened last week, but of course it was very dark when that happened. That's what a new moon is, as you would remember if you saw my astrologer reacts video. Um, so the moon is gaining light now, so that means we're starting a cycle. As the moon gains light, you will begin to see whatever this new cycle is for you. And to know that, you will have to see, where did that new moon fall in your chart? Where does Virgo fall in your chart? Do you have major stuff in your chart, like sun, moon, rising? If so, this is a new cycle, like for you, like a new version of your self-expression, maybe, strengthening your identity somehow. It's all about you. But of course, depending on where it falls in your chart, it may affect your love life or career, whatever it is, your family. But there's some kind of new beginning that tends to happen with new moons. And I guess my point is just that as we have the moon entering Libra, getting a little bit farther from the sun, gaining light, you'll begin to start to see that new beginning, whatever it is for you. Alright, Tuesday, August 30th. Moon continues through Libra here, and it actually opposes Chiron. And you can see right before noon Eastern Standard Time, Moon will be at 15 degrees Libra, and then it will oppose Chiron at 15 degrees Aries. I actually think this is really beautiful. I think this is exactly what Chiron and Aries needs. Chiron and Aries makes us very sensitive, very offended, because we are demanding to be understood more so than ever. Since 2018, when Chiron entered Aries, we've been very touchy. Like, we want to bring up our own kind of baggage. We want to be transparent. And of course, that's really, really great in a lot of ways. It can also be volatile, and it can actually bring misunderstanding, even though I think the intention is to bring more empathy and more understanding. Doing so in such a brash way, as Aries kind of tends to do, it doesn't always work out, I think, for the themes that Chiron conjures. However, when we have Moon opposing Chiron like this, Moon in Libra, which is, it's the opposite of Aries. It's all about, instead of being brash, let's be diplomatic. Let's see things from the other person's point of view. Let's kind of build that bridge. If you look at the Libra glyph, it's literally kind of like a bridge from one side to the other. So this is perfect. And then Moon, of course, is like the emotional body, our emotional energy, our intuition, things like that. So I honestly think this is like the perfect thing to kind of balance Chiron and Aries, to balance some of that sensitivity and that impulsiveness, the volatility, the brashness, the maybe the sometimes overly like focus on self that has been happening since 2018. There's been this like rise of kind of narcissism, I think. This narcissism that has to do with asserting your identity, saying, this is me, this is who I am. And of course, like I said, I think the intention is good. It's just saying, I want to be understood. Who doesn't want to be understood on some level? But, it can come across as conceited or brash or, I don't know, rude or something. So Moon in Libra, this is not a super big deal, so I don't want to go on about it too much. It's a very, very quick aspect since this is the Moon we're talking about, but I do think this would be really excellent for, like, if you do have to have some kind of, like, deep conversation about, like, feelings or trauma, or if you want to explore that with someone in your life. If you want to get to know someone a little better, maybe explore a somewhat touchy subject, this could be a good day to do it. Of course, like, it's just that there's this like balance there, this balance of us wanting to be understood, but also wanting to feel the other person's point of view as well. Wednesday, August 31st. Moon continues on, and then, kind of convenient for me, right around noon Eastern Standard Time, like I always say, Moon leaves Libra and enters Scorpio. This is a much different vibe. I always say Moon is technically not in domicile or detriment in Libra, it has been the past couple days, or where it was the last couple days, I should say. But Moon does really well in Libra. Moon does well in the Venus ruled signs of Libra and Taurus, I would say. Libra actually has to do with a lot of themes that work very well with the Moon. But when Moon enters Scorpio, it's of course very different. Moon is at fall in Scorpio, so Scorpio could actually be potentially the most challenging sign for the Moon to be in. So we will all experience this for the next, 2.5 days or so, with the Moon being in fall. This means that the emotional energy is sort of out of place. We feel exiled, we feel removed from our own emotions, or we have maybe emotions or feelings that we don't understand or that other people don't understand. Um, Having planets in fall like this just it makes things more complex. It can also make things more interesting. There's a whole variety of deep emotion that comes from Moon in Scorpio that can be very tantalizing and very invigorating. It can really wake us up. It can wake us up to truths that are outside of the norm. Scorpio wants to understand everything and figure out the mysteries or the puzzles. So there's a lot of good that can come with these sort of challenging or weird, for lack of a better word, placements like this in transits. However, I would say it's objectively more difficult. Now, it especially gets more interesting when we take into account that the Moon is approaching the nodal axis. The south node, as you can see here, it's at 16 degrees Scorpio on Wednesday. So as the Moon approaches this axis, it's not like an eclipse or anything. It's not going to be like super big life changes, unless of course this falls in a very particular way in your own chart. It's not going to like necessarily bring any like huge events. I wouldn't predict, but this will be relatively wild. It'll be an uptick in energy because Moon approaching the nodes, or really any planet approaching the nodes, it does increase the likelihood of karmic events. Karmic events meaning events that can really change the course of our lives, if that makes sense. So with Moon crossing here, Sun is not a part of this. It's not an eclipse or anything like that. But Moon is crossing the South Node. So what this actually literally means is that the Moon is about to plunge downward. It's about to sort of dip below the solar system's plane. The plane that all the planets kind of orbit the sun around. They're all on the same level, so to speak, and Moon is about to kind of dip below that. So there is, just as you would kind of think symbolically, dipping below, things tend to get more challenging, more strange, maybe harder. I guess I already said that, or more darker, getting lower, if that makes sense. So that's what the Moon is about to do, and it's kind of interesting. This is happening in Scorpio. Scorpio has to do with the underworld anyway. Plunging down. Scorpio has to do with, rare earth minerals. It also has to do with deep emotions. So in a lot of different ways, plunging down what's beneath the surface. That's what Scorpio is all about. Let's see. Okay, also on Wednesday, very interesting. Moon, before the Moon enters Scorpio, so in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, or wherever you are, you can adjust to your time zone. Um, in the first half of the day, Moon does square Pluto, so I think this is really interesting. It's really, basically the way I would take this is all day Wednesday, even before the Moon enters Scorpio, it is an intense day because even during these final degrees of Libra, Moon is squaring Pluto. So it's still getting this like deep, dark, intense type of like Plutonian energy, even when it's in Libra still. So yeah, so this can be difficult just because it dredges up our insecurities, and this is kind of what happens with Pluto and Scorpio energies. All these kind of darker themes come up to the surface, but I think this is important. There is no theme that we explore in astrology that is not important. I think some are a lot easier than others, and we tend to just like to focus on the easy ones, and who can blame us? This life is difficult, obviously, but that doesn't mean you can't run away from the dark side. If anything, I think we have to make peace with our own kind of darker side. We have to illuminate the dark in order to bring it up to the surface and light it up, so to speak. So this can be difficult, but I think it's very necessary. These are things that Pluto and Scorpio deal with. Really looking at yourself, looking at the core of yourself as well as the core of what's around you, and separating, I don't want to say good from bad necessarily, but like, I don't know, really understanding it, I guess, and becoming intimate with it. Um, I'm just gonna let you ruminate on that. I'm gonna move forward though. Yeah, let's move forward. So Thursday, September 1st, we start out the month with Moon crossing over the South Node, like I said. So this is especially interesting too because Moon will be opposing Uranus. Uranus is still close to that conjunction to the North Node. Uranus is actually retrograde, so it's kind of chasing the North Node. The nodes are always retrograde, and Uranus right now is retrograde as well. So they're both kind of moving backward together, around the middle of Taurus here. So Moon crosses over the South Node, and in doing so, it opposes Uranus at the same time. So, um, excuse me, oppositions between Scorpio and Taurus, besides having to do with like how you support yourself and investments, relationships, money, like you've probably heard me talk about in the past, these types of aspects are also great for illuminating like secrets, or I don't know, illuminating secrets, figuring out new truths, especially because Uranus is involved too, so there could be sudden perception shifts. Both Scorpio and Uranian energies are involved here, and both of those do have to do with, sudden growth, sudden evolution, sudden change, rapid acceleration, figuring out mysteries, or having information or awareness just suddenly come to you in a kind of intuitive capacity. Can be intellectual, but also intuitive or emotional, really. Scorpio really covers all those. I think Scorpio is represented as a very emotional sign, and it definitely is, but it's of course intuitive, and Scorpio can actually be pretty intellectual as well, very analytical. So you may just have information come to you. We still have Sun in Virgo, we still have Mercury in Libra. There's still these kind of intellectual energies in the background, setting the stage here. But we just get this kind of blip on Thursday, this intense thing that comes out of nowhere. This could be a like physical event in your life, but a lot of it will come from within us because this is Moon and Uranus. Both of these planets are very different. I know Moon isn't technically a planet, but it's just easier to call it a planet. They're all things floating in the sky, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna call them planets. But Moon and Uranus, like I was saying, are very different. But one thing that they do have in common is they both work from inside us. They both have to do with intuition. So having these oppose each other, conjunct the nodes, there may be some very strange things. You can expect the unexpected. You can expect sudden personality shifts or sudden changes in awareness in yourself as well as others. This is especially true for the fixed signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, especially if you want to get really technical, if you want to really do the homework. If you have planets around halfway through any of those fixed signs, especially Taurus and Scorpio, but also Aquarius and Leo as well, I would say you could give this like a 5-degree orb on either side, maybe. So like 13 to, or no, well, it depends on how you want to. I would say just 10 to 20 degrees for sure, anywhere close to to any of these positions. Anyone who has strong planets there or points there in your chart, expect sudden perception shifts, sudden awakening, sudden downloads of information, intuition kind of telling you things. So you may feel like a pull to do something or say something or check up on something. So I would say to follow that. Of course, use your other cognitive or perception abilities as well. Intuition is not always accurate. Just like thinking and feeling, we use all these to perceive our world the best as we can, but I think it's nice to use multiple of those faculties to ensure, the best kind of results, to diversify, in order to make sure things are accurate. Because these Scorpio energies can be pessimistic at times. They can be very intuitive. You can have, groundbreaking realizations. I think it's just important to make sure that, none of this is based off of any kind of paranoid delusion, because we can tend to be a little bit paranoid with these strong Scorpio energies. One aspect that I need to mention for Thursday, we do have Mars at 6 degrees Gemini, and it sextiles Jupiter at 6 degrees Aries. And I think this is pretty nice. Sextiles are harmonious aspects. This is the Venus type of aspect, a sextile. So we have like almost Venus's energy. Although Venus, of course, is not involved in this aspect. Sextiles are said to be like her energy because they are harmonious. They have to do with cooperation. And Mars is also in Gemini, so we are maybe a little bit more feisty intellectually or with our words, with our mannerisms. So we may be like very witty right now, or maybe more snarky, or a little bit critical at times. Again, this is an intellectual energy. We do have a lot of intellectual energies right now, so we're extra sharp, with our words, with our thoughts. And this energy represented by Mars is making a sextile to Jupiter, as I said. So Jupiter in Aries is like boosting up our identities and wanting to begin things. Of course, Jupiter is retrograde right now, so it's kind of pulling back a little bit. But I think this sextile, I think this sextile would be really great for like social interactions. This is common whenever you have an aspect between Gemini and Aries, because Gemini is so curious. It's very expressive, but also it's also very curious about other people. And then Aries just puts itself out there. It really likes to adventure and explore the frontier. Um, I don't know, to explore anything really. So that can definitely be done socially or with information. I think that would be kind of the focus here. Jupiter has to do with the expansion of the soul. A lot of the time that can be done through information or knowledge. That can also be done through physical experience as well. So this aspect I think could trigger a lot of both. It could trigger a lot of like interesting social kind of dynamics and interesting deep conversations maybe, or witty conversations. It can also trigger, I think, a spirit of adventure in us too. And really this depends on where this falls in your chart, as everything does really. But but yeah, it kind of just depends on where it falls in your chart. But the most general thing I could say about this is I think it would spur us to want to explore intellectually, explore information, explore people. We're very curious about other people right now. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Let's go forward to Friday, September 2nd. Okay, so Moon is still in Scorpio, so we're still feeling kind of out of place. Like I mentioned before, for this 2.5 days here. Um, by this time, though, the moon has gained a lot of light, so we're coming up on that first quarter moon that will happen later this week in Sagittarius. So things are actually starting to ramp up and become more intense, and we already feel this very much so since since the moon has just crossed the south node. We feel like there's this electricity in the air. Strange things are happening. There's weird accidents or synchronicities, coincidences. All this stuff ramps up when you get nodal energy. I often describe it like things are like a movie. There's less dull moments that we're experiencing. So this is ramping up even more as we approach the first quarter moon, which I've often said is the most volatile part of the lunar cycle, maybe even more so than the full moon. It's just often overlooked for some reason. But we're approaching this type of, very volatile, action-oriented energy here. And then as this is all happening, we're still feeling uncomfortable since the moon is in fall. So this is kind of an awkward energy, I think. It's awkward because there are major changes happening both within us psychologically on an intuitive level as well as outside in our world. And so we're having this adjustment period. Um, right now, honestly, on Friday, I don't think we're even really adjusting. I think we're just kind of struggling to keep up with these changes that are happening in our world. And this is, again, both on an individual as well as a collective level. I would expect maybe a lot of headlines in the news, but also just in your own life, there may just be kind of weird things going on, strange things going on, more activity, more intensity, more change, basically. Um, like I've said, the Scorpio Taurus axis is highlighted, so as a collective, the focus or the theme is on how we support ourselves. A lot of that has to do with the economy. It also has to do with our personal relationships as well. So, as a whole, that's where there's this intense transformation, this huge change happening. But like I say, if you really want to know how this affects you personally, where does Scorpio fall in your chart? Scorus and Torpio. I just combined these signs. Scorpio and Taurus, where do they fall in your chart? Particularly Scorpio, though. That's where this intensity is going to be. That's where it's going to be this change. So, what house is that for you? What planets are there? That's what you can look to see how this will affect you personally. Other than that, though, there is one aspect. So, Friday, September 2nd, we do have Mercury at 6 degrees Libra, and it opposes Jupiter at 6 degrees Aries. Now, this is especially beautiful for really rich conversations or just learning about anything, learning or teaching, dispersing information, being curious, maybe exploring a point of view that is different from our own or that we haven't heard before. The Mercury and Jupiter are kind of like opposing forces, but they both have to do with learning and soul growth, just in different ways. Mercury likes to do these things through information, the spread of information, the sharing of information, kind of what's the word, like personal experience, or um, I forget the word, but evidence that just comes from personal experience, that type of thing. That's what Mercury's all about. And Jupiter, on the other hand, is more about like how does this apply to the collective, or where do we get this higher information from, like from the cosmos or from the church, the university? What's the highest form of knowledge we can have? Jupiter also loves knowledge that comes from experience. So let's go on an adventure. Let's travel the world and get knowledge that way. So when we combine both of these, they're opposing each other, but they're still kind of having this conversation. So the shared theme here is learning and soul growth. And this is happening in the Libra Aries axis, which has to do with self expression and one on one interactions. How do I relate to others? How do I balance my needs with other people, etc.? All of that is Libra and Aries. So combining all of these themes, I think it really just means that we're wanting to learn from each other. We're wanting to interact. We're curious about each other. This is a great aspect for like socializing, good conversations, or maybe a good party. The Aries Libra axis loves this. Libra loves other people and hearing other people's points of view. Libra is very empathetic and all that, and then Aries loves putting itself out there and expressing its own desires, opinions, thoughts, etc. So again, this is a really great aspect for learning from each other, maybe teaching, having deep conversations, or even shallow conversations, whatever we want. There's a full range there. Mercury and Jupiter, there's this huge range of going from the shallowest of information to the deepest. These energies want us to explore whatever we're not used to. Okay, and then other than that, on Friday the moon does enter Sagittarius. I don't remember if I already said that honestly, but as it does, like I said, we're not stepping down from this intensity because we are preparing for the first quarter moon. Saturday, September 3rd. Well, the main highlight of the day is, of course, the first quarter moon. This will happen at 11 degrees Sagittarius. Sagittarius is, of course, a much more happy-go-lucky sign than Scorpio, so it is more, optimistic, more jovial. It's more celebratory type of energy, so we do have that kind of on our side. But in this case, the moon is stepping into this very harsh aspect with the sun, and it's actually also stepping into a harsh aspect with Mars. Moon opposes Mars. So moon at 7 degrees Sagittarius in the morning of September 3rd Eastern Standard Time will oppose Mars at 7 degrees Gemini just before, later in the day, moon will step into that first quarter moon, that square aspect with the sun. Moon at 11 degrees Sagittarius with sun at 11 degrees Virgo. So basically, a simpler way of saying all of that would be there's a T square, moon in Sagittarius, Mars in Gemini, sun in Virgo, T square. I wish I could draw on the screen. Maybe I should get like a program or something. I don't know. But, okay, so we are blending the energies of mostly Sagittarius and Virgo. That's where the luminaries are, the sun and the moon. So this is like the main focus, Virgo and Sagittarius. But Mars is a part of this too, Mars and Gemini. So what do Sagittarius, Virgo, and Gemini all have in common? They're all mutable signs. They're also all intellectual signs. They are ruled by people. Virgo the maiden, Gemini the twins, or Virgo the virgin, whatever. Gemini the twins, and then Sagittarius the centaur. Centaur, of course, is half beast, but it is also half human. These are all human signs. So all of these signs have to do with information. I think it's not a coincidence that they're also all mutable. Most of the intellectual signs are, well, there's 3 air signs, there's also 3 mutable signs, so those are like the most common patterns, I guess, with these like more cerebral signs. So basically, there's this like clash of information. Intellectual science, human science have to do with information, analyzing, sharing information, teaching, learning, reading, writing, consuming information, spreading information. It's all about information, learning, etc. And with these harsh angles here, the squares, there's this clash. So there could be a clash of opinions or points of view, which is so interesting because, like I said, just earlier this week, the last few days, we had these really great aspects for maybe, rubbing up on some information different than our own, or being open to others' ideas and things like that. But now there's this like intellectual type of crash or clash. The first quarter moon is also, really ramping up. This is where, things. This is where you really see in full display what this lunar cycle is about. Something began in a very subtle way 1 week ago when we had the new moon in Virgo, but it, of course, was not super transparent yet because it was more in the ethereal. It was in our minds, it was in our dreams, or, we were just kind of getting ideas at that point. Now, on September 3rd, this is where you see those ideas really come into reality, and that's why this phase of the moon is so destructive. Because whatever is coming into reality, there may not be room for it. There may or may not be. Whatever's coming in has to disturb the status quo. So at this point in time, there has to be some kind of change. This will feel very scattered when we're combining multiple mutable energies because each mutable energy has, each mutable energy is dynamic within itself or multifaceted. Sagittarius could be many different ways. Virgo can be many different ways. There's many different sides to these sides. So when you combine multiple of those, it gets very scattered, very frenetic. There's a million different ways of looking at everything. There's a million different sides to things. There's a million different ramifications. It gets super complex, super complicated. And especially, Mercury's in its pre-shadow. Mercury's about to retrograde next week. So we are not understanding everything right now at all, I wouldn't think. Especially on this first quarter moon. So, really, my only advice would be pretty much my advice for every first quarter moon. This is an excellent day to start something, to begin something, or to be active. Even if you don't necessarily have a huge plan that you want to implement, now would be a great day for going to the gym, or at least taking a walk or doing something where you can be physical or active. If you want to just try to be cozy on the couch and have a really relaxed time on Saturday, I don't think it's really going to work out that way. It just never really does with these, first quarter moons and these harsh aspects like this, these squares and oppositions, especially because Mars is involved too. So, uh, any first quarter moon is always a time of activity and tension and friction and let's get moving, let's start something. But especially when you take into account this first quarter moon is in a fire sign, Sagittarius, so fire signs are of course rowdy and highly energetic. But then also opposing the Sagittarius first quarter moon is Mars. So now we also have Mars's energy, kind of I don't know, sparking fire to this or provoking the fire, stoking the fire. We're winding this up even more. We're ramping it up. We're getting the energies riled up. Yes, it is on an intellectual level, but there's this energy of like fire. I think it's very physical. So I don't know. I could expect maybe some like debates or disagreements. Um, you know, not everyone understands that you can see things from so many different angles. I think the mutable signs naturally understand this, but not everyone does. So even if people may be seeing the same thing, if they see it from a different angle, they may kind of butt heads, so to speak, especially on a day like today. Um, but really, I don't know. It's interesting. I think the focus is intellectual, starting something new. I'm trying to think of how you can use this or what the silver lining would be. Yeah, maybe beginning something, or even if you want to like organize. It is Sun and Virgo after all. I know the moon is in Sagittarius, which is a little bit different, but I don't know, organizing something, changing something, editing, um, working out, or something where you can exert your energy. Sagittarius loves being in the physical world, but Sagittarius is also very imaginative. It can really do both. So that's where I'm kind of saying something physical. Sun and Virgo can be very physical as well, being an Earth sign. So I'm kind of torn whether you want to really be in your body, doing something physical like physical activity or organizing something, or you could take it the intellectual route and research something new, or if you wanted to start something that has to do with information, learning, teaching, now would be a great time. There's really a lot of different things you can do with this because of the multifaceted nature that I talked about with this type of energy. So really wild. I could probably drone on about this forever, so I'm gonna move on. Hopefully that's enough. Okay, Sunday, September 4th. I feel like this forecast went by so fast, but it didn't. We're at 40 minutes. Man, I'm trying to keep these things short. I keep going on and on. Okay, September 4th, Sunday, we have the moon continuing to cruise through Sagittarius as it does, and as you can actually see here around noon Eastern Standard Time. Moon will square Neptune at 24 degrees Pisces. So now we're incorporating a much different energy. Of course, this is very brief because lunar aspects are very brief, so this will not even affect the entire day. But Moon squaring Neptune does really bring in this like imaginative, otherworldly, ethereal side to things. This like spiritual and intuitive side of reality that we maybe often overlook or don't understand. So this is really excellent for like spiritual type of activities or being very creative, especially because Sun is still in Virgo, which is a very different energy. We're on a day-to-day level all month through the Virgo season, we're very focused on reality and the facts and what we can sense with our five senses. So there is this kind of conflict there. How do you incorporate Neptune and Pisces with Moon and Sagittarius and Sun in Virgo? It's kind of very difficult, but something where you're incorporating like creativity, like art, is really great for this because yes, you are being in your mind or in your heart and going off into these far-fetched like imaginative areas or spiritual areas, but at the same time, you're usually using your hands or your body to convey that as well. So that's really great for being grounded, but also exploring this kind of dream world at the same time, something like that. I always say like physical activity can be good for that too, or even like chores. And I've talked about many times before. There's this interplay between the Virgo Pisces axis that I think becomes activated when you do things with your hands, or with your body, but also your mind. So like reading, writing, even like doing the dishes, gardening, cooking, all these things are Virgo, but they unlock intuition because as you kind of do these methodical activities with your hands or with your body, it allows your mind to kind of drift. Your mind gets lost in the kind of momentum of it, in the rhythm of it. Okay. But yeah, any kind of like artwork or spirituality would be great for this too. We still feel that friction from Saturday on Sunday. Really, this weekend is not the best for like relaxing. I think it's better for being productive, getting organized. We feel this energy that we want to like prepare and plan for the future because we feel these intensities coming up. I'll talk more about that at the very end, but I want to finish up Sunday here. Mercury does trine Mars. It's not exact, as you can see. It's a degree off or so. Mercury at 7 degrees Libra, Mars at 8 degrees Gemini. But this aspect will not become exactly perfect, and the reason why is because Mercury is beginning to station retrograde. It will technically go retrograde next week on Friday the 9th. But Mercury's already slowing down, so it's not gonna quite catch up to the degree that it would need to reach to make this trine to Mars. But it is close enough that we will experience it. Um, so really, I think this is pushing us to be very social. Mars and Gemini is very active socially and intellectually with information, and then Mercury and Libra is too. We're wanting to explore other people. We're curious about people. We want to bounce our ideas, our energy off of other people with Mercury and Libra. So combining these two energies in this kind of really strong, harmonious trine, I think would be really great for social activity, but also just any kind of information. I think that's why we crave social activities with all these air placements, because air placements want information. They're curious, and whenever you can, have a a decent conversation with another person, you have access to this whole range of other perceptions and information and experiences that you may not yourself be privy to otherwise. So anyway, so that's kind of what we experience with these air energies, and I think Mercury trine Mars is definitely no exception. That's what I have for you for this week. And to go back to what I was saying, yeah, I think especially with this first quarter moon on Saturday, but also just in general, we do feel this like kind of intensity. I think it. I don't know. It's almost like it's like what we typically experience with Virgo, but just kind of hyped up. Souped up a little bit. We're like animals. We are animals. We can sense when there's change on the horizon. We can sense when there's a storm coming if we really listen to ourselves. And of course, I'm talking about like a proverbial storm right now. Um, we sense that there already have been massive changes this summer, I think, but there are even more intense changes to come. So I would say just there's no use like stressing about it. We're not. It's not about like predicting what's gonna happen. I'm an astrologer, and I can even tell you that I don't know specifically exactly what's gonna happen, but seeing the themes play out and seeing the themes where they're going, seeing these patterns, it gives me peace, and I hope that it will give you peace too. It's I think it's just the energy of preparation. It's Virgo. We're wanting to understand things. We're wanting to get organized. That's what we do to get ready for intense changes that are to come in Scorpio season, which is also funny because that's typically where intense changes are anyway, but especially this year, it's even ramped up even more so. So anyway, I hope these ramblings give you some kind of sense of peace or awareness. And yeah, I honestly look forward to these changes. I mean, there's no point in resisting it. It's gonna happen whether you're ready for it or not. So why not just kind of go with things? Virgo, I think people recognize correctly, I'll say, as like stubborn. Virgo can definitely be stubborn, but Virgo is also actually, I think, more passive than people realize. Virgo is a mutable sign. It's going with the flow. It's creating all these little rules and regimens, but those aren't actually based off of the Virgo's will. It's based off of the Virgo's perception. It's Virgo's constantly adapting to its environment. So that's kind of what our best bet would be, generally speaking. Of course, like I'll say this a million times. Like if you really want to know for yourself personally, you have to look at your own chart. But as a whole, this is kind of what we're experiencing on a collective level. So, anyway, enough rambling from me. I hope this helps you, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.